White House has been adamant that phase one of the deal with China is secure and that it is a significant step towards a wider deal. A short while ago, Peter Navarro, the White House chief trade advisor, joined me. And I asked him, well, the US administration is talking about phase one deals and seems very optimistic. But Beijing's message is much less optimistic.
The best thing for investors in particular to do is not pay attention to the press releases of either side, right? It's all happening. The Lighthizer rule is all negotiations happen behind closed doors. So we have firm commitments from them that we will have a phase one deal. They were good faith negotiations. They've left us at the altar before. Maybe this time we'll get the deal, but so far...
So it is a real deal. Phase one is real.
I can tell you. I can tell you what's in it.
But a lot of people that I've spoken to have sort of said this is smoke and mirrors.
Of course, it's a real deal. I can tell you kind of chapter and verses what's in it. The centerpiece of it is an enforcement mechanism that will apply to all phases. We can't have a deal without strict enforcement, and it's going to be an enforcement mechanism that allows us rapid response to any violations. Now, having said that, the most important part of the deal, and it's fully formed, is the intellectual property theft. We get virtually the entire chapter that we had from the 150-page agreement. There's a good start on forced technology transfer. There's good stuff on currency manipulation. Some things are not in there. Dumping and subsidies, for example.
So if this is phase one, phase two and phase three still to come,
yes,
which means these tariffs are going to remain for some time, the wider economic effect of these tariffs has created a level of uncertainty that just about every economist we speak to on this program says it's the uncertainty caused by your trade tariffs that's now harming the global economy.
I strongly disagree with that premise. First of all, there's two big economies to look at. There's China and then there's Europe. With respect to China, there's no investment uncertainty. Basically, companies know that they don't need to invest anymore in China. The supply chain's moving to Vietnam, Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand. There's no investment uncertainty. The problem, in my judgment, is a slow European economy, which is primarily driven by high taxes, high regulation, and Germany, which is too heavily export dependent, doesn't consume or invest enough, and desperately needs fiscal stimulus.
But Germany is suffering because China's slowing down, and China's slowing down because of the tariffs.
You're absolutely right. And so,
therefore, your tariffs are transmitting themselves.
There's no therefore. Therefore, the correct therefore, Richard, is the Germans could kind of look in the mirror and say, you know what, we don't want to be 50% dependent on exports for growth. We want to basically have a domestic economy that's strong. Therefore, we need fiscal stimulus, we need tax cuts, we need deregulation. We need the Trump recipe for growth in Europe. Yeah? Now, think about it. It's working here. Strongest economy.
Hang on. Let's not go too far.
Lowest unemployment rate, Richard.
Rising deficits.
Since the man walked on the moon.
Rising deficits from a Republican administration that has been anti...
I'll do one, you do one. We'll see who runs out of stuff first. 6 million jobs, 500,000 manufacturing jobs, 3.5% unemployment rate, $66,000 average median household income, up 8%. Remember, during Bush and Obama Biden, it was flat.
Greater growing inequality in the United States.
You anticipated. The greatest part of the income that's being generated is going to the bottom decile. In other words, the blue-collar workers are the ones that are reaping the disproportionate benefits.
Number of uninsured healthcare Americans rising for the first time in years.
This is a good game. 3,000 approvals of generic prescription drugs, saving $26 billion for the American people who need pharmaceuticals.
But not for those who aren't insured. Anyway, we're good. Let's move on.
Okay.
I want to talk about the deficits because The Republicans are supposed to be anti-deficit, or at least try to get towards a balanced budget.
Sure.
The deficit has risen faster. Let's not forget 2008 and 9, because that was exceptional spending. Those times at 10,
Well,
11%.
let's not forget that Obama doubled the deficit from 10 trillion to 20 billion.
For understandable reasons.
With Joe Biden cheering on.
For understandable reasons, because they were trying to prevent the collapse of the economy. More to the point.
We can argue about that.
Well,
that's an interesting discussion. I would argue that instead of cracking down on China and getting our factories back, they pursued the road to Keynesian ruin, mistaking a structural problem for a cyclical one.
I'm not revisiting the great financial crisis. We'll have to save that for another day.
That was 2 or 3 years. They were in office for 8.
The method of decision-making in the White House.
Sure.
Is it appropriate that we find out about higher tariffs by a tweet? There seems to be no policy, formal policy making. It seems to be at the whim of the president.
I strongly disagree with that premise. If you just simply look at trade policy, we have a trade team that consists of myself, Larry Kudlow, Steve Mnuchin, Wilbur Ross, Bob Lighthizer. We meet once a week religiously amongst ourselves, often in the Situation Room. We meet at least once a week with the president, and we have informed discussions. The beauty of our 5 team is that we have a very diverse set of views. The president loves that. I think he makes his best decisions by listening to diverse views. And if he's tweeted something on whatever, it's certainly because we've done weeks or months of discussions and prep work before that. So
you've never discovered a tariff move by tweet.
Of course not. Of course not. No. I think we have one of the best trade teams and economic teams in modern history, and the strength of it is from its diversity of opinion. You got Steve and Larry are kind of from the Wall Street end. I'm kind of like the Main Street guy. Lighthizer spent years in the trenches understanding trade, dating back to the Reagan years. I mean, he was a star in his own right during the Reagan administration.
So why does it feel haphazard or ad hoc? Why does it feel as if the president turned a page and decided to tweet tariffs were not going up, or they were going up? Well, now they're not going up again. Because that's what people say.
It doesn't feel that way to me. All I can tell you is listen to the Trump signal, ignore the noise. The Trump signal is basically goes back to the campaign, focus on creating good jobs, good paying jobs, especially for the men and women of America who work with their hands, secure our borders, and protect our national security. And if you look at just that and ignore the circus, the Capitol Hill dysfunction, and all of that, life's pretty
One
good.
One could arguably say the circus at both ends of Pennsylvania. But anyway...
the thing about, there's a great new biography about P.T. Barnum that I was looking at, and reading that, the hucksterism that's coming out of the Democrats right now seems a lot more akin to P.T. Barnum than anything that might happen on the other end.